Hello and welcome to our Pathways to Politics for Women in Conversation session today, where we'll be discussing how to address barriers to running as an LGBTIQ+ person. My name is Nevena Spirovska, pronouns she, her, and I'm a 2020 alum of the program at the University of Melbourne. On behalf of the participants and organisers today, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the unceded lands from which I'm joining you from, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I acknowledge that our participants and Knowledge Hub viewers will be coming from other lands and nations across the continent. I pay our respects to the 60,000 years of continuous culture and enduring connection to the skies, waters, and communities. This was and always will be Aboriginal land. Today's conversation is a timely one. While representation of LGBTIQ+ people in our parliaments is slowly increasing across the country, it doesn't yet reflect the rich diversity of the community itself. Today, we will discuss the lived experiences of out LGBTIQ+ politicians and political candidates across the political spectrum. To inform our discussion today, we are thrilled to be joined by the Honourable Harriet Shing, Minister for Housing, Water and Equality and Labor Member for Eastern Victoria. Dr. Judy Tang, Victorian Pride Centre Board Director and Commissioner at the Victorian Multicultural Commission. And Lucy Skelton, Communications Manager, Global Voices and candidate for Kew in the 2022 Victorian state election. My first question for all of our wonderful panellists is, approximately 3.5% of all federal, state and territory parliamentarians publicly identify as LGBTIQ+. Why is it important for you to be involved in politics as an LGBTIQ+ woman? Judy, would love to hear from you.
For me, it's always been the visibility piece, to show that, first of all, LGBTI people come in all shapes and sizes and colors and different diversities in itself. And then on top of that, LGBTI people, regardless of whatever profession they might have in the background and so forth, can enter politics and make some positive change from there.
Thank you, Judy. Minister Shing.
Hi everyone, I'm on Wurundjeri country today, and I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands upon which we all variously gather, and I want to acknowledge any and all Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander leaders or emerging leaders who are joining us here today, or indeed who are part of conversations about becoming involved as political candidates or representatives. One of the things that I found really compelling around the prospect of becoming involved in politics was the opportunity to be part of decision making and shaping law. As an out woman, it has had an extra dimension added to it, and that's been something that has in many ways shaped and defined the approach that I've taken to representation, not just because of what I have wanted to achieve, but often in response to the environments around me, which have, I think in many instances, made suppositions about who I am and about my life. And it's been important to be able to lean into sharing myself with the world in ways that either affirm or indeed counteract a number of those assumptions. So a delight to be part of this conversation and indeed to pay it forward, which is one of the reasons that I became involved in politics in the first place.
Thank you, Minister. And Lucy.
One thing that's really important to me is that I want to see parliaments that look like our community. That includes young people, queer people, disabled people, people of colour, Indigenous people. We need parliaments that look like our communities, because in these rooms are responsible for millions of people and billions of dollars. If we don't have that representation in those rooms, things can get missed. There are gaps, people fall through, and we need to make sure that never happens. So if we're able to bring people in who can represent those views, and of course, clarifying here that when I say that one person can't represent, an entire community, it's their experience, and that's not going to be representative of everyone who lives in that in that community, but that doesn't mean they have insights and values that they could bring to the table. And that really is a win for everyone.
Thanks for that reflection, Lucy. And Harriet, we're going to take a bit of a deeper dive now. And you were first elected, happy 10-year anniversary, to the Legislative Council all the way back in 2014, where you became the first openly lesbian member of the Parliament of Victoria. What was your experience and considerations of navigating the topic of your sexuality in the public sphere? And how can this be done safely but with pride?
This is a really important question, and I think the answer will be very different for everybody. I had not had to navigate the idea of my identity being tied inexorably to my positions on various things as far as being queer is concerned. And for me, it was a really long journey to discover pride and to be able to practice that in a way that overcame a number of obstacles that too many of us experience, because as much as anything, we don't see as many of ourselves in the community as perhaps we would like. That visibility is an important component of the idea of pride and of recognition and of inclusion. When I was first pre-selected, I found that it became a much bigger deal than I thought it would. That the idea of who I am was very specifically a subject of interest for people, usually straight, white, heterosexual, heteronormative blokes in positions of control of various commentaries, out and about in the community. I think what I have tried to do is to bring myself and my lived experience to what I do, but also to acknowledge that my experience is not something that speaks for everybody's experience, that I have one dimension to the challenges and to the ideas and the priorities of voice around being queer, but that doesn't mean that I speak with the authority of, or with the knowledge or the lived experience of other queer folk. And when I was first appointed to Cabinet to be Equality Minister after the extraordinary Martin Foley, who was Australia's first ever Equality Minister, I made it very clear that I would be bringing the voices of many LGBTIQA plus people to the Cabinet table, including trans and gender diverse people, and that was based on not my own experience, but the experience I have had of receiving mentoring and role modeling and friendship, and having had many close connections with particularly TGD folk, but also across our entire communities. The other part of this has been about knowing when and how to define boundaries, and that's something that I have learned in a way defined by experience, that as the Safe Schools Ambassador, when I was first elected, it became very personal very quickly. In talking about the importance of equal opportunity and discrimination law reform, it was very personal immediately. And this is an area where, again, I think that collective support of other LGBTIQA plus folk is vital to be able to develop that resilience, but also to be able to not forsake the personal impact of our stories on being able to persuade or to explain or otherwise to dispel myths and mythology, and particularly in the environment that we're in now, disinformation and scaremongering. So it's been a very multifaceted approach to coming into my own and learning my own voice and shaping that. And there are failures along the way, but that's the case with life, really, and finding good people to cheer you on and support you, I would say, is absolutely crucial to anybody who is thinking of being involved as a candidate or a representative, particularly for those of us who are LGBTIQA plus folk, whether in or out. It's very much down to having a good squad and a good pit crew around you.
And such an important point, Minister. There's obviously, perhaps not knowingly, been members of our community who've been in parliaments across Australia that haven't been out for many reasons. So just acknowledging their experiences amongst this conversation as well. Judy, you're an alum of the Pathways to Politics program and an out public figure in your role as a board director of the Victorian Pride Centre and formerly as the president of the Australian LGBTIQ+ Multicultural Council. As a political candidate, how do you think your experience of being out in the public eye will differ? And what support or advice have you been able to call on to navigate that experience?
My pathway has always been inextricably tied to my ethnicity as well. So, much younger, being a part of AGMC, the Australian LGBTIQ Multicultural Council, it was to advocate and to speak up for multicultural LGBTI. And that's kind of how I started my pathway. Was I out then? Kind of. Like, I suppose at the end of the day, being part of a national conference, I should have joined the dots and realized that's making me quite out. But for some reason, being able to connect with my multicultural, my ethnic brothers and sisters made me feel like family and made me feel safe. So that was one of the absolute privileges that I have had, and the safe spaces that I had in able to build my confidence and to grow up really and advocate from that. Previously, the face of multicultural LGBTI, I'm mindful of not being the only face of multicultural LGBTI, and that worries me the most. So sometimes when I am invited out to public places or to make particular speaking offers, and I usually try my best to see if I can offer to a youth multicultural LGBTI or other people, just to, again, to show that there's diversity beyond this pretty face. Sometimes it's pretty, other times it's less than that. So that's one of my fears. So if I actually do enter a role, am I going in there as the token LGBTI person, and specifically as the token multicultural LGBTI person? And am I only then known for talking about those topics and those areas? Harriet's nodding and this is nodding. So yeah, that's my concern. I'll be pigeonholed through that. And how do you break out of that? How do you show people that there's more to me than just my sexuality or just my ethnicity? Which is when we talk about intersectional approach, right? I mean, it's the whole. It's me as a whole person, and I just happen to be part of the LGBTI community. I just happen to be multicultural.
And Lucy, at 20 years old, you ran as a Labor candidate for Kew in the Victorian state election a couple of years ago. And it's something that Judy touched on just before. It's that one point of view on LGBTIQ+ representation is that it's only one aspect of ourselves and that we shouldn't pigeonhole ourselves into just one community. How does that resonate with you? And did that influence how you positioned yourself on the campaign trail at all?
When you're a candidate, there's people looking at you, there's a certain level of influence that is attached to that. And I didn't want to let that opportunity slide. So for me, I chose Instagram as a space to come out in terms of social media. So for instance, like when I first decided that this is something I wanted to do, I used an Instagram trending reel or something like that, which was very much the vibe of my campaign. We use social media quite extensively. Really, what's the point? I said one of the best things about running at 20 years old is, of course, hopefully you get that social media advantage. So one thing from that, but I made a reel being like, I kind of came out online, and I remember a friend of mine like coming up to me after I'd posted that, and there was heaps of positive support as well, but someone's like, oh my God, you need to take that down like right now, like this could really hurt your chances, so on and so forth. But for me, I kind of respectfully was like, no, like I might only ever get to be a candidate once, and if I can help try and normalize this, I don't want to lose it. So for me, it was really important, but to kind of be loud and proud and out. Like, so for instance, on my blazer, I permanently had like a little rainbow badge. I had my pronoun badge, she, her, just when I was like walking around the community, trying to make sure that when people see me, the people in the know kind of knew that hopefully, you know, I was a bit of a safe space for those kinds of discussions.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you for taking such a strong and principled stand for yourself and our communities. Minister, there's something that you touched on previously that's going to be very different for potential candidates running now as opposed to 10 years ago when you were elected. Previously in the media, which was very much controlled by, as we said, a smaller, more conservative, particular group of people, now there is disinformation in the media. Now there is active campaigns against people who stand up for diversity, against people who represent a strong voice in their community. For anyone who might be watching this and feeling slightly taken aback by that prospect of being online and sharing their true, authentic self, do you have any advice about how to approach that in coming elections, for which there's going to be plenty of this year in Australia?
Thank you for that question. I want to pick up on a couple of things that Judy talked to in the opening remarks. There are always opportunities for people to get stuck in and to criticise and to bully for any number of different reasons. So I regularly get homophobic, racist and misogynist slurs and trolling and emails and communications to me. And I think that that's actually part and parcel of being a candidate or a representative. But for people who have intersectional experience, that is a number of different elements to identity that might fall within the classification of specific groups or communities, it can be I think really aggravated and really heightened around parts of our identities that are pretty low-hanging fruit for bullies and for people who live in their mum's basement. Essentially, it's about being able to create a measure of resilience, as I referred to earlier, but also not to let that sort of narrative define who you are. That the way in which I go about my job and my passion and my work and conversations and discussions with people has to be shaped not as a reaction to what other people think of me. And in politics, they call it having a thick skin. I think my skin over the last 10 years has become as rough as a rhinoceros, but it's then also about not losing the ability to be vulnerable and the courage to be vulnerable. And I think for women in particular, that's already a challenge, that if we are vulnerable, we're seen as being, and there are so many gendered words here, we're seen as being weak or hysterical or undisciplined, that we just need to calm down or smile more. If you nurture and hold fast to who you are and what is important to you, not only do you then really clearly communicate that authenticity, which we really, really need in politics, and that diversity of representation, but you then have a sense of your own value and a measure of your own integrity when that day comes whereby you're no longer in the public realm for whatever reason. And balance outside of work. It is often a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job, as people, particularly in a campaign space, know, but also in the course of the job. And having time around that doesn't actually then require you to find a little space to breathe out and to be yourself, because you can't do it anywhere else, is something to avoid. Trying to do that without burning yourself out is another challenge. So I make it sound like there are all number of different balancing acts to go on, but really the key to this is about understanding the things that are most important to you, whether it's your values or your circumstances or the idea of where you want to head into the future, and just continuing to peg toward that and being kind to yourself around the challenges that will absolutely, as much as anything, because of those keyboard warriors, spring up pretty regularly. How to actually stay that course and be gentle on yourself and be authentic, but also understand that there are always things and people that will be a foregone conclusion whose views and minds you can't actually change, and that's okay too.
Thank you for that reflection, Minister. Judy, there was a few nods from you there. Was there anything you wanted to just affirm or express?
A lot of understanding around LGBTI is westernized or Western-led. So the notion of being out and proud is actually in a lot of ways quite a Western thing, of quite a very individualistic thing. So one of the things to consider is, as a multicultural LGBTI person who is publicly out, that's a rarer thing to have and something to consider, that not everyone feels comfortable doing that. And that's okay. I think that's probably the most important thing to share, that it's okay wherever you are with regards to how out you want to be. You could be an LGBTI, and still want to do politics. It doesn't mean you have to be out, if that makes sense. That's not a necessary thing to do. It'd be wonderful if you were and you felt that confident to do it. Everyone will get behind you totally on this, but having that understanding that people are on different stages of their life journey when it comes to coming out or being how public it is with everything. So I think to go off on Harriet's stuff is balancing the boundaries between what you want to keep private and what you want to keep public, which is not, and I don't have the answer. I'm still always figuring that out. Sometimes I'm like, maybe that should have been an inside voice, or maybe it wasn't my best work out there in the public today, but it's been done. But I think that's something, again, being kind to yourself, as Harriet said, in terms of understanding that everyone has this journey that we're all going through, and we might make mistakes along the way, and that's totally okay.
Continuous learning and improvement. I love that attitude, Judy. And in closing up today, we have a reflective question for all of our panelists, and perhaps Lucy, will begin with you. Considering your own experience, what advice would you give to LGBTIQ plus women who are considering running for election, and where they might be able to go for mentorship, support, and networking connections?
So to provide a few tangible resources, I'm in the Labor Party. In the Labor Party, we have Rainbow Labour, which is to support LGBTQI plus candidates and the queer community within the Labor Party. And we also have Emily's List, which is to support progressive Labor women candidates. And they are absolutely a sunshine of amazing support as well. So those two tangible groups are fantastic.
I think you'll be remiss of me to not mention to check out the Victorian Pride Centre, which is like a super awesome and amazing place that Victoria has built, and with the sole purpose to bring LGBTI communities and individuals together. So there is a home for those who are LGBTI themselves. If you've checked out the Queer Lounge in your respective university, how I like to explain it to people is the Victorian Pride Centre is like a glowed up adult queer lounge, so it's much cooler and fancier and amazing, and also a great place to network and meet new people. Also check out all the organizations and communities that are there and meet there.
Thank you, Judy. And it serves as a bit of a retirement plan as well. Community will be there long after politics. And Minister, any reflections that you might be able to share for people who are successfully elected and they might not know about the camaraderie that may exist inside the parliaments?
What I would say to people who are interested in pursuing a career in politics or a campaign as a candidate, you should know that you are already a leader to so many people. You are a role model to so many people in your community. There is a not insignificant number of people out there who will look to you already for the guidance that you provide simply by being yourself. And I don't say that to add pressure, but I do say it perhaps to give you a sense of confidence about the fact that you are working toward whatever outcomes you're driving for in a way that is hopefully going to have that knock-on impact to empower others. Correspondingly, find people who will cheer you on, who will want you to succeed. And there is a generosity to mentors who are great mentors in that they're not threatened by the idea of your success. I was told very early on that there is only once that you can run your first campaign. Making sure that we can find people who we admire, who have characteristics or lived experience or values or voices that we respect, and then saying, I would really like to be able to learn from you. I would really like to connect with you. And I hate the term networking, but the ideas that underpin it all are about connection and are about being able to progress and being able to seize opportunity with the help and guidance of people in a really supportive and confidential and non-judgmental environment. I would say also keep at it. Stamina is one of the really key things to build on over time in wanting to pursue a career or indeed a stint as a candidate in politics. That's not an easy thing to do, particularly where systems and decision making in the world at large will often feel like they're by design almost not making it easy in the way that they might make it easy for straight white blokes, for example. This is again something which takes stamina and having a good support crew, good mentors, great friends and family, but also people who can challenge your own perceptions, challenge you in what you think. I think the measure of any good leader is being able to listen to different perspectives and to not be afraid to be curious about the idea of maturing and evolving and enhancing our views over time. That's what I think makes a good leadership across the board. And I think sometimes, frequently, our allies are just so important in shaping the way in which we take perhaps our own sense of identity into a broader space, a broader audience, which is often mystified by why it is that our identities as LGBTI plus people are important to us and define not all, but some not insignificant part of who we are and how we move through the world.
Thank you, Minister. Good change does take time. Thank you to our wonderful panellists today, the Honourable Harriet Shing, Dr. Judy Tang, and Lucy Skelton, for sharing your time, passion, and expertise with us. I'm sure you found these conversations as enriching as I have, and here's to many, many more LGBTIQ plus people running and being elected to Parliament for many coming years. Thanks for joining us.